Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Some of you might know me, many of you may not. My name is Jess, and I'm the Director of Customer Success at Rezgo. So welcome to our webinar, Maximizing Reach and Revenue, How Redeam Simplifies Tour and Activity Distribution. So as always, we start with just a few housekeeping items. Just so you know, as a reminder, we are recording. So if you're coming in late or you have to duck out early, you will get the recording either today or by latest tomorrow. And then you are all muted, but if you have questions as we go, as you think of them, just go ahead and pop them in the Q&A at the bottom. I'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll cover as many as we can at the end, but if we feel maybe there's an opportunity to answer it in the middle of the session, I can always prompt that for sure. Anything we can't get to, we'll follow up. So I'm going to officially introduce our speaker today, Rachel Neal. Rachel is the Chief Product Officer at Redeam, and they're one of our partners here at Rezgo. And today she's going to provide some insight on how to approach distribution, just so you can ultimately grow your bookings and your revenue, which is what we all want. So excited to dive into the topic. I'll go ahead and just hand it over to you, Rachel. Welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, like she said, just if you have questions, I'm fine to get interrupted and bust in, or if I'm saying something that just absolutely doesn't make sense. This industry is full of acronyms and terminology and things like that. So if something comes up, just please absolutely bust in and interrupt me. I am fine with that. So I'm Rachel, like you said, Chief Product Officer, and just to give a tiny bit of background before we launch into this so that people kind of understand where I'm coming from. I grew up in distribution in hospitality. My very first job was as a programmer it wasn't called a channel manager at the time, but the very, very first distribution company in the hospitality space, which was created by the top 5 hotel companies and the GDSs at the time, which is where airlines are distributed and things like that. So this has been my entire career, which is really crazy to think about. And about 5 years ago, jumped over from hotel into experiences. And it's been a really fun adventure to take lessons learned and bring it into this space, but then also learn all of the fun differences on the experiences, tours, and activities side of the world. So please don't hesitate to ask questions or follow up afterwards, whatever. We've got a ton of experience within Redeam in general. So use and abuse us for sure. So these are the things that we want to cover today. Some of the questions that we want to make sure you get answered. First and foremost, obviously, the benefit of distribution. We'll talk about that. And then how do you decide who to work with, right? Do you need to be on every single shelf? Are there particular people that will work better for you or not? There's not a magic number. There's not here, these are the top 10 that you will have to be on no matter what. There is definitely some things to consider. So we're going to go through that. There's a myriad of different things that need to be thought about depending on what kind of an experience you are, what kind of an activity you are. So we're going to go kind of through those things. And that will lead to, how many of these different distribution partners should you be working with? What makes sense? And then as you're working with them, how do you price that? And what kind of pricing considerations should you take in mind as you're contracting with these third-party distribution channels, or as you're setting up your products and your pricing within the ticketing system. So we'll kind of talk through some of that. And then last but not least, how to differentiate yourself, how to not compete with yourself, basically, right? How can you offer something different on your website than you're offering to these OTAs, and how to make that one-on-one guest experience from your direct sites a little bit different than what they're getting on the general distribution platforms. So we'll talk through all of those. And then, of course, any other questions that come up. So first and foremost, the benefits of distribution. So why distribute? Obviously, extending your global reach is number one, first and foremost. As an operator or as an experience provider, there's absolutely no way that you can be everywhere all of the time on your own, right? There's not a way to make sure that you're getting all the keywords bought, that you're on every single search engine that's being hit in every single area of the world. So distributing to a third party lets you extend that global reach, right? Obviously, you increase your revenue and you increase visibility, but also we're going to talk through this here in a little bit when we start talking about specific distribution partners, but you're going to learn there are some very strong and very specific regional partners out there that will get you in front of untapped audiences you never knew even existed. It's one of the things that we've learned more, I think, than other things in this particular industry, is that consumers have a lot more preference and a lot more personal investment in their experience purchases than they do in like their hotel, car, air purchases. And there are some very specific distribution partners that are out there going after very targeted audiences. So there are definitely some untapped audiences out there that unless you are distributing through third parties, you're just not going to ever be able to reach them. The other advantage to distributing through your ticketing system, distributing through a partner like Rezgo, you get to see your whole picture. Right? If you are distributing through multiple different ticketing systems or on different platforms or manually distributing, then you're having to look at all of these different reports. You're having to collate information. And if you're managing it all from that single source, then you can pull one report. You can see where all your distribution is happening, who's outperforming others, what's selling more on this channel versus selling on this channel. There's a lot of benefits to being able to create that whole picture by distributing out of one spot and then hitting multiple partners from there. And then the other benefit of that is if that is also the platform that you are selling on your direct website, then it's very, very easy to compare your direct sales to your distribution sales. So all of that just helps you learn what's working, what's not working, and make that plan moving forward. So getting that whole picture, that single source, is very, very important and a huge benefit to distributing out of your ticketing system. Avoid whack-a-mole, as we call it. If you guys are not familiar with whack-a-mole, it's that fun game where you have the hammer and the little things pop up and you try to smack them as they pop up. If you are managing your distribution manually, or you're going into the various extranets of the Get Your Guides and Viators and whatnots of the world, and you're out there and you're managing manually that way, you're always playing that whack-a-mole. You're adding more inventory here. You're taking more inventory away here. You're managing cancellations there. You're managing pricing individually. You're having to do manual updates for pricing across multiple platforms. So when distributing out of the single source and through a distribution partner like Redeam, you avoid all of that because you're managing out of a single bucket of inventory, or you're managing out of a single spot. So you don't have to incur all of that manual or that operational overhead and cost by playing that whack-a-mole, as we call it. And then last but not least, there is an improved guest experience. By distributing out of your ticketing system, you are able to provide barcodes. It's one of the things that Redeem guarantees to all of our distribution partners or the resellers connected into our system, is that they will get a ticket, a barcode for every single ticket that is sold or experience that is sold through the platform. So your consumer will walk up. It doesn't matter which channel it is that they bought that ticket on. If they bought it through Redeem and then through Rezgo, that guest is going to have a scannable barcode, QR code, whatever, and you're going to be able to have that same exact guest experience when they walk up and get scanned, and you know that they were there and you know where they came from. So all the guests arrive with that same check-in, check-out experience. It makes it better for you. It makes it better for them. It just makes the whole entire experience flow more smoothly than if you're having to manually exchange vouchers, or you're having to upload barcodes into an extranet, and it makes a better experience all the way around for you and for the guests. And if you're wondering whether or not experiences really are it's important to put these things online, we've been doing a ton of research, and for kind of the first time ever in the hospitality space, more and more people are starting to actually report on experience distribution. It's been a little bit of the red-headed stepchild. in the distribution space. And there's been just report after report after report on air distribution and car distribution and hotel distribution, but not really experience distribution. Well, starting with COVID, that really started changing, and there's a lot more reporting and a lot more statistics coming out, which is of course very exciting for us. But this one is one that I just found came out really recently. TripAdvisor put this big report out, and what we see is that people are buying more and more in advance, and this stat here supports that more than half of travelers in 2024 booked in advance. That's a significant change from pre-COVID, where activities were always something that happened as an upsell after a hotel booking or after an air booking. Or it was something that people didn't do until they were already in that location, right? They had already checked into the hotel, and then they're like, what are we going to do today? Or what are we going to do while we're staying here? So not only are more than half the people actually booking in advance, they're booking them up to 4 weeks in advance of their trip. And that's just not something that has happened historically with experiences. For the first time kind of ever in the history of the hospitality industry, experiences are starting to be the primary driver for a reason that people are going to a destination. They're searching for what is there to do in this place, or where can I do this thing first. They're deciding based on that where they want to go, and then they're booking all of their travel after that. So it's more and more important for you guys as operators to be kind of everywhere, not everywhere, but to be in as many places as you possibly can be, because you just don't know where these consumers are looking for these things. And the fact that they are booking so much more in advance than they ever have in the past, it's just that much more important for you guys to be out there. And it's impossible, absolutely impossible to be everywhere that you need to be without distributing through your ticketing system and through a third party like Redeam. Space? No, why is it not? Okay. Apparently click does it. So when we're talking about, we've talked about why to distribute, but then it's always important to figure out who you're going to work with, right? Determining which partners are right for you, because you don't want to try to be absolutely everywhere. So like I said before, we can't say these are the 10 partners that you should always be doing business with, right? You need to make the decisions based on what's right for you, the type of experience you are, what you're trying to get from your third-party distribution. So what we've done here is over these next few slides, we're going to talk about some of the characteristics of some of these partners, and then we're also going to talk about things for you guys to consider when making these decisions. So first and foremost, the traditional OTAs. So you have the big guys, right? The ones everybody's always heard of. And sorry, I'm moving my own head around because it just keeps getting in the way and I don't know. Oh, I think I can stick you at the top. We'll do that. Okay. So you have the big guys like the Get Your Guides and the Viators. Booking.com is starting to become a big player in the market. Expedia is starting to come back and do some more direct contracting and not just pull from Get Your Guide and Viator. But by far, Get Your Guide and Viator are the two largest as far as just number of experiences, number of people that they reach, and then just volume, pure volume. So if you're looking for a volume play, right, you're just looking to sell as much as possible, these are great partners for you to be distributed on. I will say they typically produce a ton of volume. We've had customers in the past get on and then actually have to either cut back on the allocation that they put out there or actually turn off the channel because it's a lot more than they were expecting. And we'll talk about some of that, why, what things to consider. But they will absolutely produce a large volume of tickets and sales for you. And there's definitely some levers and some tricks and things like that. It is more of sort of a pay to play environment. So they will have a lot of things like promotions. The bigger discount you can give them, then the higher you will show up on the search results and things like that. Definitely the partners that are supporting the most amount of technical technical pieces of their system, you will get higher and higher up on the list when you display there, and we can talk about that as well. But it is definitely much more of a pay-to-play environment. So you have to know that while you, on a booking by booking basis, you may sacrifice more because you're giving a bigger discount or you're providing a promotional rate, you will make that up in volume. As far as relevance in the market to general consumers, if you're trying to get your name out there, you're trying to just be known, it's kind of just the be on the shelf mentality. These big global OTAs are great for that, right? Just for visibility, to show up in the market when they're searching for Cancun or Hawaii or whatever it is, just to show up on the shelf. It's very good to play with these big guys. There's a lot of stats out there that talk about people do a lot of research on these big OTAs, and then they will go and book on a smaller OTA, or they'll book on the supplier direct. So relevance in a market is really a good reason to be playing with these big guys. They obviously have larger teams of operations, tech, et cetera, sales. So they typically have better tech. They typically have a smoother or faster onboarding process than others. So as far as getting on the shelf faster, usually that tends to be true with these big guys. They do have less flexibility on terms. Unfortunately, they are they're kind of the big gorilla in the room, right? So they do have that kind of power to be able to say, well, these are our terms. If you want to play with us, this is what it is, because they have hundreds of thousands of experiences out there. So they do have less flexibility on terms. And then with these big guys, there's always that debate about consumer ownership. Is it a get your guide consumer, or is it a insert experience here consumer, right? So who owns that customer? And you will get things like you'll never get a consumer direct email address from the big guys, but you will be able to communicate with the consumer, but it's through Get Your Guide or through Viator. So that consumer ownership piece is a big thing to consider when you're talking about the big global OTAs. And something, if that's really, really important to you as an operator to develop that one-on-one relationship with the consumer, then potentially playing as much with the big guys is not something that you want to do. Then when we talk about medium and regional outbound, and that's an important thing versus inbound, right? So these are people that are taking consumers from another area and bringing them inbound to your area. So I have examples in here, Civitatis and Klook. If you don't know who those two are, Civitatis is the #1 outbound OTA for the Spanish-speaking world, and then Klook is similar for the Asian market, with the exception of mainland China. And they are great for these targeted customer bases, right? So if you know that you have a product, or like the Spanish-speaking community, that Latin community is a community that you want to go after, that you target, then partnering with Civitatis is absolutely fabulous. There are consumers that are very loyal to them and only will book on Civitatis. So it's great for that targeted customer base. They do have more discerning consumers, because those consumers are specifically going to those regional OTAs for very particular reasons and have an expectation of what they're going to find on those OTAs. So they're definitely a more discerning consumer versus just the general consumers that are going to a Viator or a Get Your Guide. They typically do have more flexibility on terms, but the exchange for that is that they are smaller teams. They tend to have slower onboarding. In some cases, they have more like content expectations for onboarding and things like that, because they're doing things in multiple languages, or they have a very particular way that their product is presented to their consumer because it is a targeted specific regional consumer. So sometimes the onboarding onto these medium regional outbound OTAs is a little bit longer process, or a little bit more laborious than it is for the just very general big Get Your Guides and Viators of the world. Then we have destination inbound, right? So these are people that are specifically targeting to bring consumers into your market. Most operators I have found know who these people are, but there's a bunch of different ways that you can find them. If you don't know who they are, definitely ask. You can ask us. I know Rezgo's got a ton of information as well. So find out who's bringing in the most business into your area and specifically into your area. DMCs are always good for that, right? Those are the people that are specifically targeted. Usually the websites are actually named after the destination, right? But also passes, things like Go City and Sightseeing Pass and things like that, because they are specifically bringing people into your market. They're usually high performing for people in that market because they are the consumer that is booking that pass or booking with that DMC is specifically going there because they don't know the market. They know that they're going to that market, but they don't know what's happening in that market. So there's a lot of trust in these distribution partners. And so they usually are high performing because the consumers are coming in to do business with them with a high level of trust and will purchase what that DMC or what that pass is offering out. And they're very, very good at partnerships. They really want to create a close bond between what's happening in that destination and their teams that are promoting that destination. So if you're really looking for a good distribution partner, it's going to be lower volume than like a big giant OTA, but it's going to be a really good deep partnership typically. Then you have the tangential markets, right? So these are the things that are kind of brushing alongside of the experiences. So it's not specifically, they're not specifically OTAs or distribution partners aimed at selling experiences first, right? So obviously all the travel ones, hotel, air, car, short-term rentals, things like that. But also one of the things that's actually been really interesting, the live events and fan events. These events and fan events are the things like the Comic-Cons and fandom events and like the autograph events at sports arenas and things like that. And in the experiences space, there's always sort of been this separation between live events and tours and attractions. And that is coming together. Those lines are blurring. And what we're finding is that in the live events or fan event world, they are more willing to partner and do packages or do upsells for other experiences in the space where that event is happening, because typically that event for them is a short-term event happening in that space. So if they can bring a consumer into that space for that Comic-Con, for that concert, whatever, and then earn ancillary revenue off of other things that are offered in that space, that's a win for them. And they by no means are experts in that destination because that event that they've brought into that destination is a short-term event. So it's been this really cool experience that we've been seeing growing more and more, is this partnership between in-destination activities and short-term events that are coming into that destination. And then interestingly enough, the world is flipping a little bit. We've actually seen some partnerships now between experience-driven sites that are now upselling air, hotel, et cetera, versus the other way around. But of course, there's always the upsell programs out there that are saying, you know, now that you're flying into Chicago, here's some things that you can do. So you want to make sure that you're working with those partners that are providing that. And then last but not least, niche channels. So these are typically these are like closed membership or closed contracting sites. So this means that if you have MFN or parity statements in any of your contracting, typically you can do business with these niche channels outside of that, because these are channels that are targeting specific consumers in a closed group. So these are things like memberships, loyalty programs, and not just loyalty programs like traditional loyalty programs like hotel or air, but this is things like Chase and Wells Fargo, right? The big credit cards that are really, the credit card loyalty programs are blowing up. It's actually kind of crazy. Benefits rewards programs, like the employee rewards or employee benefits programs, those are blowing up like crazy. Experiences fit really, really well into that. And then there's all of these unique offer, and I have bucket listers as an example out there. They've been rapidly growing. I'd say they're the fastest growing one that we've seen so far. And these are guys that are very specifically targeting, hey, if you want to go to a destination and do something very unique, then they're known for finding those unique things. So if you are an experience that maybe is a little bit different, has a unique twist to it, then partnering with these unique offer channels is really, really extremely beneficial. So how many of these should you be working with? This kind of works along with what kind of characteristics do they have? How many should you be working with? And then things that you should be considering as far as your unique product and how to figure out who to partner with. So some things just right off the bat to start thinking about. These are recent stats that have come across my desk. The Sphere in Las Vegas was Ticketmaster's third largest booker in 2024. Oasis and Monster Jam, surprisingly, were the other two that were booked more than the Sphere. The Sphere is on 35 channels just with Redeem. That doesn't count the channels that are direct connected into Ticketmaster. So you can see the Sphere has fully embraced this concept of third-party distribution, and they are actively out there pushing distribution, and it has definitely paid off for them. This stat here, travelers today visit 277 different websites before booking. That is up from 38 websites in 2013, which is quite a long time ago. But what's interesting about this is that there was this idea that that number was going to go down, right? People used to think 38 websites was huge and that number was going to go down as people became more loyal or search became more efficient. And it's gone exactly the opposite of that. Consumers are just thrown information so much these days, especially when we talk about social media and stuff, and we'll talk about that here. But there's just this constant barrage of information being thrown at consumers these days. And so when you think about the number of different places that they go for inspiration or information, the fact that they're visiting 277 different websites before they go and actually book a trip, that just shows that being on the shelf concept, right, is really truly relevant. You've got to be out there. You've got to be in a bunch of different places in order to be not only relevant, but to be found and to be stumbled upon by these travelers visiting 277 different websites before they make a decision. So how do you make this decision, right? How many are you supposed to be on? Who are you supposed to be partnering with? How do I know to make sure I get onto one of those 277 different sites? Well, here's some things to consider in making those decisions. So what kind of ticket type are you or do you have, right? If you're general admission and you have no limit to the number of admissions that you can take in at any given time, be on as many distribution platforms as you possibly can, right? Just open the floodgates. And as long as you're doing it through your ticketing system and through a distribution platform, then the amount of work that takes is minimal, right? You will have the operational efficiency of distributing is very, very, very high. So be on as many different channels as you can. But if you have a limited entrance, then you really want to make sure that you maximize those channels that you're on, right? Because if you can only bring 10 people in per entrance time slot or per boat or per whatever, then you really want to make sure that those 10 people, you're getting the maximum amount of revenue out of those 10 people. And we'll talk about how we can do that. If you have timed entrance, right, then you need to consider how that's going to be represented on these different OTAs. Some OTAs can't handle a timed entrance situation. And so then you're having to kind of fudge things out there, or you're not able to really maximize your revenue by pushing particular times and not other times, things like that. So if you do have timed entrance, you need to consider that in which partners you're going to be doing business with. And then, of course, if you're a group or you have tiered pricing or tiered ticket types, that's a technical limitation for a lot of distribution partners. And so unless you can turn that group or tier-based pricing into a more general pricing and you have unlimited, then you really want to consider which partners you do business with, because you want to make sure that you're able to maximize that revenue and you're not having to make sacrifices or earn less just simply because from a technical perspective, they're not able to represent that group or represent that tiered pricing appropriately. Other things that limit the partners that you could do business with are things like booking questions. This is additional information that needs to be received as part of the booking process. So this could be anything from like passport information, nationality information. We've got some helicopter partners that need to know the guest weight before they can make the booking, things like that. So just extra information that needs to occur as part of the booking process. There are some distribution partners that can handle that and others that cannot. Guest names. If you need to have a guest name associated with every single one of the tickets that are sold, that's a limitation for some resellers. So things like that need to be considered. And then the other one that we see happen pretty often, it's sort of tied together with that. Sorry, I've got gunk in my throat. Tied together with that group or tiered based ticket type. If there's final pricing, so if the traveler mix or the number of people affects the final price, other than just being a multiple of the original price, then that's something to consider. There's not a lot of resellers out there that have the ability within that booking flow to say, here's the initial price. As we move through and gather more information, the number of people, the traveler mix, things like that, this price could change and show a new price and get approval from the consumer before moving forward. So there's an estimated versus final pricing functionality that is not currently supported by a lot of resellers. Now, I will say, especially when it comes to timed entry, tier and group, and final pricing, those things are on a lot of roadmaps and for this year or for near-term release. So that's really good. It's definitely become something that's been an obvious gap in the industry. So don't write them off forever if that's things that you have in your world, but keep them on a warm list, but something to consider as far as people you want to go live with in the near term. And then when we're talking about direct versus distribution, if you have limited availability, right? So you don't have kind of general admission where you can just take thousands and thousands of people in. If you have limited availability, typically you want to see 50-50 to 50, a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split in direct versus distribution. That's typically what we find. So 60% direct, 40% through third-party distribution. So you want to make sure that you are partnering with people that are going to fill that 40% or fill that 50% to the maximum amount of revenue that you possibly can, right? And that's not necessarily just with who's offering the smallest discount or the smallest net rate, right? It definitely could be a volume game. It absolutely could have to do with being able to offer out specialty promos that aren't necessarily a reduced price, but just a different experience, things like that. So when you're talking about direct versus distribution, you want to have that 50-50 split or that 60-40 split, depending on the type of operator that you are, or depending on the type of entrance that you can accept. You want to make sure that you're contracting for flexibility. This will allow you to pull those levers and move those things to be able to maximize that revenue, right? And to be able to get that correct split that you want in your direct versus distribution. If you are contracting allocations or you are guaranteeing parity between your website and that third-party distribution, then you're kind of handcuffing yourself a little bit as far as being able to ratchet down what you're giving that channel, or ratchet up what you're giving that channel, or offering a promotion on your direct website. Then you have to also offer that promotion onto these third-party distribution channels as well. So you want to make sure when you're contracting for flexibility that will allow you to, move those levers and maximize your revenue. If you have a partner who is kind of demanding allocations or demanding parity is definitely something requested more than allocations. But if you do have somebody that's demanding parity, great. It needs to be mutual parity, right? So they can't undercut you just as much as you have to offer them a reduced rate if you're offering your own guests a reduced rate. And so typically you want to look at making sure you are contracting discounts, not set amounts, right? Don't contract a $50 rate, contract a 15% discount. And then that allows you to revenue manage and change your pricing up and down. The vast majority of the distribution partners that we work with, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say everybody that we work with at this point, maybe there's a couple exceptions, but they wouldn't be big producers anyway. The majority of the people that we work with can handle price changes, right? So they are fetching prices more than once a day, or live as they're going through the shopping process. So as long as you are contracting a discount instead of a set price, then you can change your pricing accordingly and you can maximize that revenue. You want to make sure that you sell as much as is operationally available or efficient. We have seen operators in the past that hold some back, or it's too operationally inefficient to manually update these channels. So they put 50 tickets out there and they just leave it. And if they're sold out, they're sold out, and they don't go and update that because it's too operationally inefficient. It's too much work. Working through Rezgo and through Redeam, it's all coming out of one bucket. It's all coming out of one pool, right? That's why we say don't contract those allocations, because then you're just working out of that pool. And if somebody sells more or somebody sells less, no problem. It's still, you're working to sell as much as possible. And since it's all coming out of the same system, it's operationally efficient. And so there's no additional work that you need to do on your side. So we did have done some, run some analytics and things like this. And what we're finding as far as partners that are getting a good amount of volume out of distribution. So we definitely have partners that are doing more than this, definitely partners that are doing less than this. But as far as the people that are in a really healthy state of distribution, these are the numbers that we're typically seeing. If you have a limited availability product, right? So you can't just sell everything all of the time. You can't have thousands of people in there. Typically, we're seeing that operators are on 5 to 10 channels. And that's not 5 to 10 huge guys, right? That's typically like a Get Your Guide and a Viator, and then some niche channels, some regional channels, things like that. But if you have unlimited availability, we're seeing 10 to 30 channels. So even from our perspective, the Sphere out live on 35 channels right now, and they're not done. We have 15 channels in pre-live for them right now. They're just continuing and continuing and continuing because they have this kind of never-ending amount of supply that's out there. So they're definitely kind of an exception to the rule, but what we're seeing is anywhere from 10 to 30 channels. And that's overwhelming, right? That's too much if you're trying to do that all manually and you're trying to manage that in extranets. It's impossible. So we highly recommend that you work through your ticketing system because it's that much easier. And there are things you'll see a lot in 2025 and 2026. You're going to see a lot more things around like content distribution, mapping distribution, just a lot of things that have to do with onboarding efficiencies. It seems to be the primary focus of a lot of resellers right now, which is great. And we've been kind of holding on to functionality within the Redeam system, waiting for resellers to be able to jump on board with that. So like we work with Rezgo whenever new functionality comes in and things like that. So you should be expecting within 2025 and into 2026, operational efficiency, onboarding efficiency to be increasing more and more, because it's definitely a focus of the distribution partners. So let's talk about pricing considerations. We've talked about ticketing types. We've talked about characteristics of OTAs. Let's talk about pricing. So contracting, I already talked about don't contract allocations and parity, right? And if you do contract parity, make sure that it's mutual. This is so important. This, along with that fourth one, the onward distribution rights. If your particular activity is listed on Google Things to Do, this is a great place to be able to check parity. There are no tools out there right now that make it really easy to just see who's selling your product where and for how much. There's a few tools like that in the hotel industry right now, and we're trying to get people to do that in the experiences space. It's a very overwhelming process. So right now that Google Things to Do display is it's kind of the best as far as a one-stop shop to be able to look at parity and see who is onward distributing your product. We talk to a lot of operators who have never looked at their Google Things to Do display, or when they do look at it, they don't even know half the people that are out there selling their product. And it's because in their contracts, there's onward distribution rights out there. And so their product is getting sold onward and onward and onward and onward, and they don't have any control. And in some cases, it's being discounted and discounted and discounted as it's going on. So you have somebody that's selling your product, you don't know who they are, and they're selling it lower than you're selling it on your direct website. So if you are contracting, or if they are insisting on parity, make sure that it's mutual parity, and make sure that if you're giving onward distribution rights, you have the right to say, yes, I want to be on that particular channel, or no, I don't want to be on that particular channel. So that's really important, because that's going to stop you from showing up on some random channel that you never even knew existed at, $10 less than you're selling on your own direct website. The other thing that's important as far as contracting is concerned is keyword protection. This allows you to kind of always be the master of your own keywords. These are not the generic keywords like wine tour and things like that, right? But your specific keywords that will drive, especially your name, right? These are specific keywords that will drive a consumer to your specific product. Make sure that in your contracts, they do not have the right to bid on those keywords. That will stop people who have larger marketing budgets than you do from going in and gobbling up all of your direct SEO. Also, discount versus flat rate. I mentioned that a minute ago as well. If possible, always contract a discounted rate versus a flat rate, that 15% discount or 20% discount versus a $50 rate. This will allow you to flex your rate depending on volume, market, et cetera, et cetera. So always contract a discount instead of a flat rate.
Rachel, do you mind if I just cut in really quickly?
Yeah, bust in.
It's because we have a question that's related to this topic.
Mhm.
So question, how can you negotiate mutual parity and onward distribution with the big ones, like Get Your
Yeah.
Guide and Guide Tour?
Yeah, it's definitely harder. That's where we talk about, they're less flexible on their terms than some of the medium guys. And I think sometimes they're just counting on people not pushing back. First and foremost, just push back more than anything, just mention it. And we found a lot of times it's one of those kind of gimme clauses in their contract that their salespeople are empowered to negotiate on or remove or whatever, but a lot of people just overlook it and don't even mention it, don't even talk about it. So definitely We've seen more success with mutual parity for sure, because they know they're getting something out of it as well, right? They know, okay, they're not going to undercut you, but you're also not going to undercut them. So if you're going to give a promotion on your website, then they're going to get that promotion as well. So that's one way that they will typically agree, is as long as it's mutual parity, then they'll agree with that. And then the honor distribution one is a tricky one, because they have massive, massive affiliate programs, right? Get Your Guide to Viator, count on that a lot. That's a tough one. It may be something, if you're counting on the volume coming from them, and that's just, you need to do business with them, that might be one that you have to give on, because they are very specific about that. And just to be very frank, they don't have the teams and technology and et cetera to do that channel by channel acceptance, basically, and to say, yes, I want to be on this Get Your Guide affiliate, but not on this Get Your Guide affiliate. So that's one that you may have to give on. But then I would say definitely pay attention to the reporting that you're getting out of Get Your Guide to see where your product is going. And if you find one on that, like Google things to do, and you're like, I have no idea where this is, find them online, send them an email, call them, whatever, right? And say, where the heck are you getting my product? And then if it is from somebody like a Get Your Guide or a Viator, then absolutely talk to your account managers, let them know this person is selling my product. They're undercutting me like crazy. They're not representing me correctly, whatever the problem is. And we've seen that they've actually been really great about helping with that and fixing with that, because they don't want to have bad relationships on that side either. So if you see that problem, definitely talk to your Get Your Guide account managers about it. Let them know about it. We've seen a lot of success with people getting that fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions about that? Or did that answer the question for whomever asked it?
Sounds like there's a challenge reaching a sales rep or having an account manager in some cases, but we won't digress too much there, but I can understand how that can be a challenge.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's sort of this balancing act that they're trying to work through right now, because by just being able to sign up online and agree to some flat terms and et cetera, you can onboard yourself, and they're being way more open to just kind of accepting most people into the fold. But then at the same time, they don't have the staff to keep up with that. So absolutely, getting a hold of somebody is hard, especially if you didn't get an actual salesperson that you could negotiate with. If you talk to a person, cling on to that person, keep that person in your email, and keep a relationship going with them. But also, if you're working with us, let us know. We've got great connections over there, great people that will help us out with things. So definitely come to us, ask us. We'll do whatever we can to get stuff fixed as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some pricing considerations then. So you will get pressure to always be running promos, right? And getting your product bumped up in the list because you're running a promo and things like that. Try, if at all possible, try to resist that pressure and only use those promotional pricing in low times. This goes back to what I was talking about. You want that like 60-40 mix, that 50-50 mix. And of those tickets that you're distributing, you want to make sure that you're maximizing that revenue. It's scary sometimes to think like you might give up bookings that you had before. But if you're on enough channels and you're on the right channels, then those bookings that you're giving up because you got bumped down because you didn't offer a promotion at that time are going to get filled with tickets from another channel that you're not having to offer a lower price at. So only use those promotional pricings in times when you need to boost your bookings. Another thing that a lot of the resellers are starting to use is different types of promotions, right? So looking at being able to offer a unique experience or offer an add-on for free versus giving a discount, right? But just make sure all the time that if you are offering some kind of price discount or some kind of promotion or something like that, that you are getting something in return, right? And that is going to get you what you're expecting out of it, right? Make sure that you're getting moved up in the list. Make sure that you're getting some sort of specific marketing for it. Oftentimes we see that people just kind of get absorbed in this wave of they're participating in everything and they're doing everything that's being asked of them, and then they're just in this lump with hundreds and hundreds of other operators, and they're not getting anything in exchange other than making less money per ticket. So make sure when you are participating in those promotions that there's something in there that they're saying they're going to increase your placement, or they're going to include you in particular marketing and things like that. Make sure that it's specific marketing for your destination or for your type of experience or something like that, not just general, hey, come look at all the cool stuff we have type of marketing. Technical considerations for pricing. Some of the stuff that we talked about before, right? Like group tiered add-ons. A lot of resellers can't do add-ons as far as after something has been purchased, then you can add on a meal or add on a VIP entrance or whatever. So it has to be a part of the original offer to the consumer. And then we talked about dynamic pricing support. The vast majority of them can support dynamic pricing. So you should be able to flex your pricing and you should be able to maximize your revenue. So as long as you're contracting discount instead of a flat rate, you should be able to flex that rate up and down to maximize your revenue, because the vast majority of resellers these days will support dynamic pricing. And then finally, for marketing, what I talked about just a minute ago, look for product specific marketing versus price reduction, especially if you're talking about those niche players, right? Or those regional players, being able to offer something just to guests coming in from a particular region or members of a particular group or whatever. That also helps you with some of the parity clauses in some of your big contracts, because it's not considered parity because this is a closed group, right? They're not competing with the same consumers. So you don't have to match parity there because you're talking about a closed group. So when you're talking about loyalty programs or employment benefit programs, things like that, you're able to do different marketing and different promos with those guys than the general OTAs, because it's a closed group and they're not parity as far as the consumers that they're going after. And then last but not least, for marketing, social media opportunities is huge. We are working with a couple of social media partners right now, and it's been a really interesting experience. It hasn't exploded yet the way that I had hoped that it would, but we're getting there. There is 75% of consumers last year said that what they saw on social media directly influenced travel decisions that they made. Anybody that's under the age of 35 doesn't make a purchase decision as far as style, fashion, retail, whatever, without some sort of social media influencer or content creator influencing that decision. And actually, this shirt that I'm wearing right now, I bought because of social media. But it's historically been something that's been very difficult to book for travel. That's changing. So absolutely look for opportunities where you can get social media influencers, content creators, etc., to push your product. And there's a variety of different ways that that can happen. And I'm happy to do even an entire session on that or have an entire conversation with somebody about it, because it's something that I'm ridiculously passionate about. But the compensation, the content creator compensation is changing from before, where it was, you have to pay me $150 and I'm going to promote your thing. And oops, I hope some people actually look at it. It's much less that, and it's much more guaranteed commission off of bookings, off of sales, right? So that commission-based compensation is more of a thing now than it ever has been. So you have the opportunity to say, look, I'll give you a ticket to my thing, come see it, promote it, whatever, and then earn, 5%, whatever, off of any of the bookings that you make through it. And more of the technology is supporting being able to track that. So social media is absolutely a great way to do some marketing. And especially if you know a particular target market that you're going after, it's crazy how easily and quickly you can find content creators and influencers that have your exact target market as their followers. It's the amount of data that we have on these guys is absolutely insane. So definitely look for social media opportunities. We've got some great social media partners we're happy to share with. And it is the fastest growing marketing opportunity as far as experiences go. As far as direct bookings in the travel industry, experiences are the number one growing vertical, because it can be a instant gratification, click to buy sort of thing versus hotel or air or whatever, where you have to coordinate with people and check schedules and all the fun stuff. So yeah, go social media. That's my that's my message there. So let's look at some examples of this. I think sometimes this is all very theoretical and things like that, but when we actually like sit down and we look at examples of this, it kind of solidifies in people's heads, right? So some troublesome examples that we've seen as far as the way people have contracted or the way people have set up their data. So using the same name for a ticket with different start and end dates. It may be something that you can do on your website. It may be something that works well when you're talking to a direct consumer. The vast majority of resellers cannot handle that, right? So the example that we have there is an all-day ticket. There is a adult standard price, and then there is an adult promo price, and they're both available at the same time. The vast majority of resellers can't handle this. They'll either reject it straight out because they say, I've got two adult prices, I don't know what to do with this, or they'll display both to the end consumer, and it's very confusing. And a lot of times they'll just take the product down because they don't like the way that it ends up looking to the end consumer. So what you need to be able to do here is you need to be able to flex your availability and turn off that standard price during the days that you're offering that promo price. So there's still only one unit coming through, right? So there's only one name coming through with that different price. If it's something that you want to or need to be able to offer both, or you can't adjust availability appropriately, then actually build out two different options there. So you have all-day ticket, standard price, all-day ticket, promo price. So it's very obvious that these are two separate things and why one is priced differently than the other. The other thing that we've seen problematic is one entire product for each time slot. We have had numerous resellers that will just straight out reject that operator, will not connect, will not onboard any of that for resellers where it's, this is my 8 a.m. tour, this is my 9 a.m. tour, my 10 a.m. tour, and every single one of those becomes a different product. They need to actually be separate options under the same exact product, right? So you have this tour, entrance times 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., etc. This is something that we can work with you, work with Rezgo, etc. on. It's one of the things that we do all day, every day is adjust the level that all of these things sit at so that it goes to the resellers in a way that they can sell it and will accept it. Right now, we talked about this, I mentioned this earlier. Right now, add-ons should be created as separate products instead of something that gets added on at the end. Get Your Guide is giving us add-on functionality later this year, so that will be kind of cool. But most distributing partners can't do that. So if you do have add-ons, especially high volume or high revenue generating, high priced add-ons, create an entire separate product, including that add-on in there, and you're going to get a lot more sales out of that. And then good examples, right? Things like peak, non-peak, morning, evening, VIP standard, build those as options under a product versus separate products, because you're going to be able to display those to the end consumer, and they're going to be able to see those all in one list and be able to see, oh no, I do want that VIP experience, versus way back up on the funnel where they see the VIP experience and the standard experience and they may not even show up on the same page. So definitely create those as separate options under the same product, and you're going to get a lot more volume, a lot more purchases out of those higher price items, because the consumer is going to be able to compare all on one page. It works very, very well. I'm going to take a quick breath there. Looking at my watch, we're at the top of the hour. I don't know if we want to answer questions. I've got some examples, or just say, here's my email, contact me later if you have something.
Great. Well, I think there's a question from before you mentioned social media. So I know you talked a little bit about it, but we've got a question. Just any more advice on how to find social media partners?
Yeah, so there's a ton of really cool, and I can send it out. I can send it to the Rezgo partners, and they can send out. There's a lot of really cool tools out there and partners out there, very low cost, that get you access to a ton of creator data, and it's very user friendly, and you can dig and search and everything, and they've got all kinds of stuff to be able to find this market, these types of people, etc. If you need help discovering what, oh, and then by the way, through those tools, you can contact those creators as well. If you need help discovering what types work well for you, you can scatter shot out to everybody, and then you'll get responses back from particular people who know their audience and know that they can sell your product. And that is a very common thing in the social media space, is just to scatter shot out. But I can send some examples. There's Sprout Social is a great one. Later is a great one, like Later is a great one. They just bought a company called Mavely, where they're creating little travel shops. I highly recommend them. There's another one called Superfiliate. That's a great one as well. But I can send some of these things out to you guys as a follow-up. No problem.
That would be great. Yeah, we can include that in our follow-up as well.
Great.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that anybody has? Can just give it a moment. I know we are at an hour, but Rachel, you also said you had examples.
Yes. So, and I'm assuming that this presentation is going to go out to everybody.
Yes.
Okay. So these are examples. So these will be included. They're all, I use it, Get Your Guide as an example on this. So these are all different types of layouts on Get Your Guide, which is actually really interesting. Can you guys still see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
High roller.
Yes. So this is the high roller on Get Your Guide. They have a really interesting data model, because they're actually coming out of Ticketmaster, which is event-based ticketing system. So you can see here, they have these sections, as they call it, these daytime ticket peak 50% off, and then full price. See how it's all listed right there? This is that first example where it's very confusing to the end consumer, because they don't understand why they're being offered all of these different options out here, and like, why, if there's a 50% off one, why are the other ones even listed there? And it's because this particular ticketing system doesn't have the ability to control the availability appropriately. So this is a great example of something that doesn't necessarily perform the way that you would want it to perform, and you're not going to get the hit off of this. You're taking the time to do this promotion, and you're not going to get the hit off of it that you normally would. And or if it's availability where you don't want to offer this 50% off, it's going to end up showing down here, even if it's not available, with this little message that says like next availability, blah, blah, blah. So they're going to go, oh, you know what? I do want to pay 50% off. So I'm not going to go on the day where I was going to pay full price. I'm going to go ahead and go on this other day and pay 50% price. So this is an example of that first one that I was talking about, that ends up being troublesome, and you won't be able to maximize your revenue off of that. This one, this is American Dream in New Jersey. And like I said, these are all included in the presentation, so you guys can go around and play around with it. This is where they're doing peak and non-peak as separate products. So again, it comes down to that. People will change their mind about when they want to go based on these things all being displayed here, right? So you don't want to have those as different, absolutely separate products. You want to be able to do these as different options, and control that availability. So if they're searching for a peak day, the only thing that's going to show up is that peak day. You don't want the other options to even show up because they'll change their mind and end up paying less. This is Frameless, which is a very cool experience, by the way, if you ever are in London. This is a great example where they've done their time slots appropriately. This is how you want your time slots to show up. So these are all different options under the same entry. And this is the best way to do it. You'll see there's some other ones, and the time slots will end up showing here, or it'll show as all of the separate individual ones down below, which usually get your guide. If they find that, they turn it off right away. So this is an example of a good one in the way that they send their time slots through. Now, we've done a lot of data manipulation with this particular partner to get this to get your guide in this particular way that it will show correctly. But we're happy to do that no matter what. But this is a good example of dealing with time slots and being able to maximize that. And then last but not least, the Vanderbilt. So this is a good example of using the different options, right? Like here's the VIP tour versus general admission, and they have them as different options all under the same product so that they can see right here, right? This is, if they have these listed as two completely separate things instead of two different options under the same product, this would not even show up here. So they wouldn't have this opportunity to say, hey, there's this really cool VIP guided tour option for you. You definitely want to pay the $1,000 instead of just $46, right? So this is an incredibly effective upselling opportunity that is just there simply because they presented these as separate options under the same product. So that's that in that last thing that I said, talking about do general admissions or standard and VIP as different options as a good thing. This is an example of that and why this is so beneficial and why this is so effective as far as being able to maximize your revenue. Yeah, this is a great one.
That's great.
You'd be amazed at how many people do that.
The visual, you know, also on my side, I know how it works in Rezgo, how it works with the product and the options. So anyone who is looking to set this up, you know, definitely can all work together to make sure that you're setting it up correctly.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really is the best possible situation, right? It's funny to think about that setup, that initial setup has such a critical, important part in actually maximizing the revenue on the other end. But it really, really does. So, and we're happy to play with things if we need to and change things up and stuff like that. So don't worry if you don't get it right the very, very first time. We can change it up and work with you, no problem.
That's great. Thank you. I don't see any other questions right now. But again, if you know, we're going to send a follow-up. If anyone thinks of questions after the fact, could definitely reach out and we can make sure we get that answer too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll send the social media stuff as part of the thing, and also a channel list with some characteristics in it too. If people are looking for particular regional partners or particular niche partners, whatever, we can provide that as well.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So much great information, lots of in-depth detail. So I really hope that everyone enjoyed that. And then once again, we will be sending the recording out along with those resources shortly.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.